this is Randy Berth, and this is the Gospel Seed Sower program. Thank you for tuning in today. This message is about the mark of the beast. Is it literal? Is it symbolic? Or both? If you've watched the first three episodes in this series called Mark of the Beast, is it literal? Is it symbolic? Or both? You've found that there is a push to have the entire population of the world microchipped in one form or another. We have been listening to Dr. Catherine Albrecht, a researcher of the RFID technology industry. And we've been playing some clips from a speech that she presented in 2009. In this episode of the Gospel Seed Sower program, we are going to play some highlights from that speech and then try to connect the dots with what she says is going on in the world and with what the Bible says about the mark of the beast. Before we continue, let's have a word of prayer. Kind Father in heaven, we thank you for thy great love and your mercy and your kindness, and we ask you to send the Holy Spirit to help us understand the things that we're talking about, researching, and reading about in the Bible, your holy word, the Holy Bible. We thank you for hearing and answering this prayer. Lord, help us to understand what this is about, and the message that you want us to know from the Bible. We thank you for hearing and answering this prayer. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Okay, so let's review some highlights from Dr. Catherine Albrecht's speech.
I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht, and if you're not familiar with my work, I guess I've kind of been known as the RFID lady. I first found out about RFID back in 2002, and I've spent the last probably 7 years of my life researching it, telling people about it, sounding the alarm about it, and cautioning people about it. But what is less well known about me is that I come at this from a Christian perspective. Back in 1999, when I founded Caspian Consumer Privacy, the group that I've run now, I guess, 10 years, to alert people about the dangers of supermarket frequent shopper cards, the Safeway cards and the Kroger cards that people carry in their wallets, that are used to make detailed records of everything that you purchase and essentially serve as a numbered card to buy food. Very problematic. When I first started that, I started that because of something that had happened to me many years before. When I was a little girl in the Midwest at the age of 8 years old, and my grandmother sat me down after we'd been grocery shopping, so you can tell my interest in grocery stores there, and she said, "Kathy," and back then I wasn't Dr. Catherine Albrecht, I was just Kathy, and she said, "I got something really important I want to tell you. There's going to come a time when people will not be able to buy or sell unless they have a mark on their right hand or their forehead. And we don't know when it's going to happen, we don't know how it's going to happen, but one thing we know for sure, it's in the Bible, and if it's in the Bible, it will happen." And she said, "And I want you to promise me that you will never take that mark. And I want you to promise me that you will sit your own children and grandchildren down and have this same talk with them." So I made those promises, a little farmhouse in the Midwest. My grandfather was actually a mink rancher, so we were kind of out in the middle of the country. And as I'm looking around the kitchen, we had just been grocery shopping at a Kroger. Ironically, that's actually where I started my campaign against supermarket cards years and years later. But as we were unpacking the groceries in that little farmhouse kitchen, I said to my grandmother, "You mean people won't be able to buy or sell anything, like even groceries?" And she said, "Especially groceries, because if they don't sign up and take the mark of the beast, they'll starve." So 30 plus years ago, in that little farmhouse in Ohio, 1970s, I looked around and I said, how is that possible? I had, at that time in my life, never seen a credit card. I had never seen a computer. Computers took up entire city blocks. They certainly weren't in supermarkets, for heaven's sakes. They certainly weren't every place you would go to buy and sell. There couldn't possibly be a computer there. That didn't occur to me. I couldn't even imagine how you could identify everybody on the planet, great and small, rich and poor, free and bond, or enslaved or imprisoned, as the Bible describes. Much less could I imagine a way that you could get every single place where things are bought and sold on board with something like that. So my little 8-year-old brain was kind of whirring away, and I thought about this and thought about it. And I said a couple of things. I said, first of all, I absolutely will never take that mark myself. But something else, if it's not thousands and thousands of years from now, I'll pass it on to my kids and their descendants, and someday, way, way in the future when this happens, then hopefully my descendants will know. But if it starts happening in my lifetime, I'm going to pick up that Bible and I'm going to read it, And I'm going to know that what's in it is absolutely true. Because from my vantage point in the 1970s, the chances of any of that coming together were so slim, it would have been as though somebody had told me, I don't know, some Aztec prophecy, when a purple flower fills half the sky, it means to pull out these scriptures and read them. You'd go, well, that's never going to happen. So that's kind of the perspective that I had. If that occurs, then I'm going to take this real seriously. And I have to say that experience at the age of 8 years old, my family went on to live in Los Angeles. I've gone to Harvard, I've been in lots of liberal institutions. I've certainly not lived a life that would cause a person to become a devout, committed, Bible-believing, born-again Christian, I'll say that. Had it not been for my grandmother sitting me down in that farmhouse and having that conversation with me at that time, I doubt I would be saved today.
Okay, so she says she has a Christian background. And as a child, she grasped the idea that Revelation chapter 13, verses 16 and 17, we're talking about a literal mark. And without that mark, a person would not be able to buy or to sell. Well, that's simple enough for an 8-year-old girl to understand. Should be simple enough for an adult to understand. People are literal. Buying is literal. Selling is a literal matter. Person's forehead is literal. I know someone who has searched the scriptures to find every place in the Bible that says, talks about the right hand. And, to me, this is talking about literal matters here, but some people want to find out what the right hand means. So this one person found several scriptures on what the symbolic meaning of right hand means, came up with several different answers, and then had to pick and choose from those to explain what he thought the right hand meant. But this is talking about a literal person. A person is literal. A forehead is literal. A right hand is literal. So we don't need to confuse ourselves here. This is so simple. And so the mark of the beast in the right hand or in the forehead will be literal too. The mark of the beast will have a literal aspect to it. It usually does take something literal to pay for something that is literal. When I was a child, I understood it to mean literal things. It's elementary, folks. Buying and selling are very literal matters. Most young people today are not being warned about what the literal aspect of the mark of the beast is and are actually being conditioned for it. They're being conditioned to receive the mark of the beast. Many people don't realize that the mark of the beast has a main spiritual issue that the literal aspect of the mark of the beast will represent. I have some ID on me. Here's my driver's license. It has my name on it. It's got my picture on it. It's got a number, my date of birth, and it tells where I live. Now, this is something literal. Now, this ID card, it represents something. It's proof that I have studied the driver's handbook and have those rules in my forehead and have taken the driver's test and passed it. And they gave me this card with my picture on it to prove it, that I passed the test, and that I have been authorized and given the privilege to operate a car on the roads and highways as long as certain conditions are met. So when the mark of the beast law is passed, a person will be required to carry some form of ID to show the grocery store clerk that they have met the state requirements and are authorized to buy and sell. And in this case, with the mark of the beast, it will be national and global. Now, the main part of that mark of the beast requirement will be that a person will have to agree to go to church on Sunday. Revelation chapter 13 is describing some form of ID that represents something it's describing. It will describe permission to buy or sell and an agreement to participate in an act of worship. And that act of worship is in violation of God's 10 Commandments. There are a lot of people who realize that something major is developing. They understand that the U.S. government has been buying up billions of dollars worth of bullets and weapons to deal with possible social unrest in the USA. Why would there be social unrest in the future? Because they are expecting the U.S. dollar to die. When the dollar dies, when the U.S. dollar dies, there will be social and civil unrest, and martial law will be declared. And that's what they're getting prepared for. They want to bring in a new global monetary system, a cashless society. And this is when the mark of the beast will come in, which is enforced Sunday worship, along with its literal aspect, which is a literal physical proof of Sunday worship, which they will try to require people to have or be put to death. They are gearing up for war with resistors of the New World Order and Christians who will refuse to receive the mark of the beast. They are actually planning this. They are planning the death of the dollar. They want the U.S. dollar to die because they want to bring in this new system. The Club of Rome has the world divided into 10 future kingdoms. And we will get more into that subject in a future program. But let's listen to Dr. Catherine Albrecht as she explains how the world is being conditioned for bringing in the cashless society and the mark of the beast.
There are churches across this country, the kind of churches that have 5,000 and 10,000 people coming in on a Sunday, that find their numbers so enormous that they've got to start treating the children going into the Sunday school like inventory. And they're actually installing fingerprint readers so that those kids can be more easily processed into Sunday school. Churches, mind you, these are churches. This is not schools. This is not the Department of Immigration. This is not Customs or Border or Homeland Security. These are Christian churches on our own soil in our own country who understand so little about what the prophetic books of the Bible tell us about this time we're living in right now, that they are using automated fingerprint readers to get kids into Sunday school. So we know we've got microchip implants. We know we're getting to the point where you're not going to be able not only to buy or sell without a number, you're not going to be able to get a job, rent an apartment, go to a doctor, or walk down the street without a number. You may not even be able to start the ignition on your car without a number. Well, how does this tie in with payment? Because that's what the mark of the beast is all about. Well, right now, millions of locations around the country are having these devices installed. These are swipeless RFID readers. I guarantee you that there are people in this room with RFID tagged credit cards in your wallets right now. I've never spoken in a group that didn't have them. And now I don't even ask because I always just want to run off the stage screaming. When people wave them, is this one? Yes, that is one. If you want to know what they look like, the blink cards, you can see on the bottom with that Visa card, you see in between the big Visa and the little Visa, there's kind of it doesn't show up very well there. But what it is, it's a series of little waves. It's like sort of the letter C nested inside of each other a couple of times. If you see that, or the words PayPass, see on the blue card on the right that's held up to the reader, it says PayPass, kind of hard to see there. But if you see the words PayPass or that symbol on your credit card, it is contactless, it contains an RFID tag, and you might as well remove the chip from your credit card and put it in your hand, because wouldn't it be more convenient, rather than holding your credit card up to that little reader, to just hold your hand up to the reader? And the more we embrace these horrible devices, the more we're going to get to the point where everybody's just tap and go. You know, all the kids just fingerprint and go into the Sunday school. Everybody just credit card and go into the mini mart and the supermarket and everywhere else. It's a no-brainer to then go, well, we're already used to doing this. Let's just put it in our hands. I'm telling you, we are almost there. We are so close. I feel the hot breath of the beast nipping at my heels. All right, there are technologies out there right now in use at amusement parks and other places where you can just wave your wrist at a reader. RFID tag right in the wristband. Again, getting you ready for that idea of just wave your hand and you can make your payment. You've got ones where you can do it for payphones. Just wave your wrist at a payphone. You've got ones where you could do it for vending machines. Wave your wrist and out pops a Coca-Cola. Oh, there you go. You can see them right there. Chip-activated payphones, vending machines, and the like. And they're trying to get us away from change. The financial industry believes that we're wedded to coins for little purchases, soft drinks, a magazine, a $3 sandwich. So they're trying to get us to use these instant payment devices, wristbands or easy credit cards, to get us away from cash because they very desperately want us to stop using cash. That's one of their stated goals. Now, obviously, the end point of this, if you've got a microchip in your ID card, and the microchip contains all your accounts, all I have to do is walk over to you with a gun or a knife or just an intimidating look on my face and say, hand it over. I want your card. Or I could just be a pickpocket, reach in your pocket and pull it out. So the next point of this, from a security standpoint, might well be saying, well, this has to be a permanent identifier affixed to you. How about a microchip? How about an implant? We have the technology to do it. It's here. People aren't really willing, but it's here. Microchip implant, the Verichip, you've probably all heard about it. It's the same thing that you saw with a chip in the antenna, except this time the chip has the antenna wrapped around it. It's stuck into a capsule of medical grade glass, has a little bit of polypropylene plastic on part of it. Sounds real juicy to stick in your arm. And they're injecting them into people's arms right now. Nobody's really taking it in their hand other than a couple of hackers trying to be cool and scary about the mark of the beast. Most of them are going into the arm. Midway between the elbow and the shoulder. It's kind of an inconvenient place to put it if you want to make a payment. If I'm walking by the Visa device, it's kind of inconvenient to do this, but it's sure convenient to do that, right? And if I don't have hands, if I'm, maybe disabled or paraplegic, I'm in a wheelchair, then I'm a little bit lower, and I'm still right at the level of the reader, I can just do that and press my head to it. So you can see how the mark of the beast in the right hand of the forehead makes perfect sense. That's where you put it. And if you don't have a right hand, then your forehead, everybody's got a forehead. Everybody. All right, there's your picture of your microchip implant. Shows what it looks like. Don't fall for this thing. It's the size of a grain of rice. It's the size of 2 grains of rice. It's actually pretty big. And they can't put one in you without your knowledge, accidentally. You'll know it. It hurts going in. They have to use a huge injector device. It's not something you could inject with a vaccine. It bleeds. You got to put a Band-Aid on it. And even before they put this honkin' injector device into people, they have to put a little lidocaine injections around it because it hurts so much. So you're not going to accidentally get one of these in you. All right, whoops. Hang on, I'm going the wrong way again. All right, Tommy Thompson, former head of Health and Human Services, most powerful public health official on planet Earth, actually was in charge of that office under Bush when they approved the Verichip as a medical device. Within months after he resigned from that position, he took a position on the board of directors for the company. And he actually said that he looks forward to the day when all Americans would have one of these implants to manage what? Their electronic medical record. Now that was under Bush. What does Obama want to give us all with Obamacare? An electronic medical record. And in fact, it's already been paid for in the stimulus plan. You guys probably didn't notice, but when they were signing over all those tens, hundreds of billions of dollars, written right into there was funds for the electronic medical record for every American person.
Okay, so if we count the number of times that the word worship is mentioned in Revelation chapter 13, we find that it's mentioned several times. We find that people worship the dragon. They worship the beast and his image. Then we find again in Revelation chapter 14, verses 9 through 11, where punishment is given to the wicked. And we find the word worship is mentioned again. Revelation chapter 14, verses 9 through 11. Verse 9. And the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, If any man worship the beast and his image, and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, verse 10, the same shall drink the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture, into the cup of his indignation. And he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels, and in the presence of the Lamb. Verse 11. And the smoke of their torment ascendeth up forever and ever. And they have no rest day nor night, who worship the beast and his image, and whosoever receiveth the mark of his name. Make special note that people are punished for receiving the mark of the beast, which identifies those who worship the beast and his image. You see, they worship the beast and his image and receive his mark. Also note that receiving the mark of the beast and worship are mentioned in the same verse, verse 9. So it is logical to conclude that the mark of the beast will have something to do with an act of worship, and that the mark of the beast will have a literal aspect to it, which will be just as much a part of the mark of the beast as the act of worship that it represents. And as we can see, where it looks like things are moving toward, with the image of the beast and the New World Order setting up a worldwide control grid, well, things are fast heading toward a system of forced worship.
All right, now let's talk about the direction that we're going as a nation. There was just an article I read this morning that, Senator Cornyn of, Senator Schumer of New York and Senator Cornyn of Texas were both just yesterday or the day before talking about how we need some kind of biometric identifier for all employers in this, for all hires, all jobs in this country. That you would not be able to get a job without having a biometric ID card and approval of the federal government. Talking about it with a straight face. So all of these ID requirements are starting to tighten up. All right, Real ID. You guys may be familiar with the battle that we fought over that. We're not out of the woods. We didn't win that battle. We got them to dump Real ID. That's the national ID card where the federal government was going to take over your driver's license. But now they've reintroduced, or now they're introducing something new called a Pass ID. Same thing. There's really no difference. It's still the federal government in charge of your ID. It's still a national ID system, and it's worse now. Because Real ID, they promised us they wouldn't use RFID, because we all hate RFID. So they promised us, no, just let us get it through. We won't do RFID. Well, now that that's dead in the water, and the Pass ID is their new version of national ID on all of us, we have Janet Napolitano, Homeland Security Director, saying, well, I know what we'll do. We'll make a new Pass ID. Hang on. Let me go back. And we'll make it be an enhanced driver's license. Won't that be good? Do you see how we're kind of like out of the frying pan into the fire here on Real ID? Janet Napolitano has said, seriously, with a straight face, that our new driver's licenses should all be RFID tagged, just like these border crossing cards that are now voluntary in certain states. All right, let me move forward. All right, the Real ID program, which has now been replaced with Pass ID, would require that you carry this one single federal card in order to do the following things: board a plane, open a bank account, enter a federal building. Let's say you're called in for court, or you need to talk to the IRS. You won't be able to get into the building otherwise. To get a job. Scary stuff. To rent an apartment or buy a home. Already laws are going into place in places where they have immigration issues around the country, saying that you have to show some form of authorized federal ID in order to rent a home or buy a home or rent a room in somebody's house. To receive health care. One of the most frightening parts of Obama's new health care plan is we would all be issued a federal health ID number, a federal health ID card, and a federal health electronic medical record. That is the quickest route I can think of to get a national ID card into the wallets of American people, and you better believe it's going to have RFID in it. Maybe not right out of the gate, but it will. So I don't even need to read the legislation or figure out why to oppose national health care. All I have to do is look at the part that says everybody gets a national health care ID number and everybody gets a card and everybody goes into a single federal database to say, no way.
Well, it sure looks like there is a tremendous push for a national ID in some form or another in the USA. So is the USA ahead of the rest of the world on this idea? Well, actually, no. It's lagging behind. But after the US dollar dies, and right after chaos begins, the USA will become the leader in helping to enforce the mark of the beast worldwide.
All right. How close are we to this happening? Let me tell you this. It's happening all over the world right now. China last year was the biggest RFID market on the globe. Not for product tagging, which is where they thought the market would be, but for human tagging. They issued over 1 billion RFID tags into nationally mandated, forced at gunpoint in tanks, and you know China's got those. They forced people to carry these remotely readable RFID tags that state your reproductive history, health history, you name it. Readable from a distance by communist government authorities. In fact, if this were a communist gathering in this room right now, in communist China, I bet you there would probably be some government officials, and all they'd have to do would be walk that way, that way, that way, and that way, and they would scan every single person in the room and know everything about you. Done deal. It's done. Not proposed, it's done. Who put it in place? Our companies, IBM, Dell, Cisco, Hewlett-Packard, American companies. Mexico is going to be issuing ID cards, national ID cards to all of its citizens. India is going to be issuing 1.2 billion national ID cards to all of its citizens. Romania is issuing a national ID card to all of its citizens. You go down through the list, and they're getting all the third world countries with hundreds of millions and billions of people in them, people who don't even have running water. And they're being issued high-tech identity documents, and all of their information is being placed into these enormous national databases. This is all part of a global system.
There's a verse in the Bible that says that the mark of the beast will be enforced globally. Revelation chapter 13, verses 16 and 17 state that very clearly. Verse 16, "And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads." Verse 17, "And that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name." And it also states very clearly in verse 15 that they will want to kill those who refuse to accept the mark of the beast. Verse 15, "And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed." If you just tuned in and you are wondering why this guy keeps talking about enforced Sunday worship as being the mark of the beast, and if you are wondering how Sunday worship can have anything to do with the mark of the beast, well then, you need to look for the video on the Gospel Seed Sower channel on YouTube that tells who the beast is. Watch that video and you will find out who the beast is. It's called Mark of the Beast. Who is the beast? Then watch the one called Mark of the Beast. What is the mark? You see, there's more to it than buying and selling and being a form of ID for something that it represents. You need to know what the spiritual aspect of the mark of the beast is. You need to know what the literal aspect of the mark of the beast represents. And be sure to watch the one called Sealed for Eternity. Until next time, may God bless you and you have a good week.
Lord, I offer you my simple praise. My life to you I give. Please teach me how to live for you. So here it is again, my simple praise. My heart